and executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE presses. And I'm typically here with some of our phenomenal acquisition editors on Thursdays between 5 p.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. Pacific time and 8 p.m. Eastern time and 9 p.m. Eastern time to answer whatever questions you may have. It can be around anything. It could be around creative writing, the business of writing, the business of publishing, um, why we're here. I mean, uh, why we put so much time and effort into this, anything around our publishing house, you name it, it's all good. Why I'm wearing a Bazinga t-shirt, hey, whatever you want, feel free to ask the questions. So usually I'm here with Peter and Ben, who actually are two of our long-standing acquisition editors. They actually started off, both of them, they had both submitted to us some. Ben had submitted a narrative poem, and Peter had submitted a short story. And in our interactions with them, we realized that they're great editors. And so we initially had just offered an opportunity for them each to individually join us and edit some of our works. And then we offered them both opportunities to help us acquire new titles. So uh, super excited to be here with you. Really glad that we have a chance to be here with you. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free, go ahead, toss those questions into the comments section of whatever venue you may be joining us, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, X, whatever, wherever you are, feel free, go ahead and ask us whatever you would like. I do have some sad news. We had a phenomenal, a dear, dear friend, a great writer, a great editor, Taylor Grant, who had throat cancer, and he passed away this past week. Um, really, really heartbreaking. I mean, he really, not only was he incredibly talented as a writer and an editor, he was also, I mean, really just a genuinely fabulous human being. So I just wanted to take a minute and to acknowledge him and acknowledge his phenomenalness. We published his short story collection, The Many Deaths of Cole Parker. And I'll be honest, I mean, I was in love with this collection. It really is a phenomenal dark fiction short story collection. And, I still remember when he and I were talking about publishing it with Running Wild. And, I remember the first time I read the short stories and I was just blown away. And I told him, I'm like, these are great. These are fantastic. And, me being overexcited about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm sure these are going to sell, incredibly. And, it's going to go viral and blah, blah, blah. Which honestly, shame on me. I know better than to get too hyper excited. And unfortunately, it did not go viral. That said, I mean, I still absolutely adore this collection. Um, if you do have an opportunity to check it out, I'm going to pull it up now. Um, and if you do have an opportunity to check it out, whether it's ebook or paperback, what have you, please, please do. Again, I mean, this really is just a phenomenal short story collection by a truly wonderful author and a wonderful human being. And I'm honestly, all proceeds, I'm going to actually pass along to his son. He does have a son who, um, uh, yeah, he has a son who most likely could probably use the funds moving forward. His son's newly in college, actually. Um, and I also intentionally within the link provided a link to BookSoup so that you can uh, uh, actually also benefit a local bookstore. Um, but and admittedly, it only gives you a link to the paperback, not to the ebook. So I am also pulling up for you a link to the ebook so that if you're not interested in a paperback, then you can pick up the ebook. And again, this is Taylor Grant's short story collection that we had published back in 2020, The Many Deaths of Cole Parker. Again, a truly fantastic collection. And I really do encourage you to go pick it up and help benefit um, this wonderful man who recently passed away. So, uh, let's see. In terms of things that have come up in the past week, we have been absolutely actively working on a ton of different things. We are still finalizing the remainder of the books that we had already previously acquired, and that actually get us out to at least part of through 2025 and part of 2026. So we are going to be actually going through. Well, I actually went through all the books already that were submitted to Running Wild and RIZE up until now for uh, consideration in our full length area. And so, because for those, originally we were talking about getting together all of the acquisition editors. We were all going to get together on September 25th and review those books that um, we want to consider for acquisition. But I'm giving my acquisition editors a little bit more time so that for them to go through all of the remaining titles. So most likely we're not going to get together until I want to say probably mid-October, something like that, which is totally fine, all good. And in the meantime, if you submit it to us and it's something that it's just not really a good fit for us, or maybe it needs a bit more work, you most likely have already received a rejection note from me. If you would like additional detail in terms of like the why we decided that it's not a good fit, you are welcome to ask me. I am going to forewarn you though, I am a little bit behind. I have a book I need to map out. I have a couple of books that are currently in play in terms of editing, where I'm obviously the editor. I'm also I have a book coming out on October 3rd called Family Pack, which is a follow up to the book that we put out, I believe it was in 2020, called Cure. So, or actually 2022, called Cure. So, um, with that in mind, please understand if it takes me a while to get back to you. Again, just because I really have a lot of things that I need to knock out. We were also just accepted to a small business um, growth program, to help us kind of like, you know, more so fast pace our growth and getting the word out about our incredible stories. And I actually went to the kickoff for it on Monday. True Blast. It was actually hosted at a Marriott, and the mayor of Los Angeles spoke during in the discussion, as did several other, I guess you could say, dignitaries from from Los Angeles and California. So, really excited to be a part of it, to have been identified as a one of the leaders to have our companies grow and expand and so on through the program. And I definitely want to put a shout out to Ty, who is one of the key facilitators, one of the key people who's running the program. Because I had actually initially submitted, I'd submitted um, to the program to be considered. And at the time, I mean, I was just like running around like a chicken with no head. I was going all over the place, tons of different locations. I was speaking at a lot of different places. And, they came back and said, hey, we would love for you to do a video kind of explaining, why you feel like your company would be a good fit for this program. And I honestly, I was just seriously, it was so hard to get a hold of me, and he persisted, got a hold of me, and the end result was that we were actually accepted. So again, very excited to be a part of it. Hey Peter, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's awesome to see you.
Yeah. Got some cool things going on. So where do we just get accepted? That's just when I popped on.
So Running Wild was accepted to a small business accelerator program that's benefited by the Intuit Corporation and Los Angeles. And they had the kickoff this past Monday. So I'll be assigned a mentor, and an executive coach. We're going to get all this software for free, as well as training on the software, which is great. And it includes anything from like the full Mailchimp suite, and like different more like financial packages, and someone to actually manage those financials. So um,
Wow.
and that's just the start. So and it's funny because they were like, and these are the things that you absolutely have to attend. So it was mandatory for me to attend the kickoff. So it was very cool to like meet all these other like small businesses and everything. So
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. You got to keep us posted on that, on those things.
oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And it was, what was hilarious is like two or three different business owners asked, like, so how did we get picked, right? And boy, did they skirt that answer. Like it was like, you know, answered everything else other than like how like
Blindfold
one,
on a dartboard kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like I mean, they basically let us know that maybe 20%, if that, of the small businesses that had submitted to it were actually chosen.
Wow.
And the mayor, believe it or not, uh, pretty explicitly said we didn't all necessarily agree on who should actually get accepted or not, but at the end of the day, we all came to the table in agreement for this class. So um,
Wonderful. How awesome. That's
yeah,
great.
so yeah, it's for a full year, so I'll definitely let you know how things evolve, I guess you could say.
I can't wait.
So tell me, so what's going on? What's exciting?
Well, I kind of backed my way into a speaking engagement. I'm not quite sure how. Well, I know how I did it, but I didn't think it was going to happen. I reached out
Okay.
to a professor at the grad school I went to for
Mm,
graduate school,
mhm,
and asked what we had talked about is that the contest for the best manuscript from the graduating class. You
mm.
know, to see which one, if they'd be open to interested in that. And I don't know the contact person at the school, but I know that she's affiliated with it. So I reached out to her and I told her who I am, what I'm doing, and everything. She's like, if you could send me some materials about your press, that'd be fantastic because my students would love to hear about it. She's having a week long writers conference in St.
Okay.
Augustine starting
Okay.
Friday. And she's like, or if you've got a few minutes, you can zoom in and talk to them about, what it's like being a acquisitions editor and an editor. And I'm
Oh.
like, oh wow. So my body answered before my brain could say, whoa, 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 stop it. It didn't go so good last time. So sure, I'm all for it. Keep it short because I know they're part of the work. They're doing a week long workshop, so time is of the essence. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
going to carve out like 30 minutes to do maybe 15 minutes worth of talk about how I got started, how Running Wild got started, and our process in selecting manuscripts, and then open the floor for questions. I think there's maybe 6 writers, so it's not going to be a very long thing, very drawn out.
Mm-hmm.
but it is something that I wanted to bring up tonight because I was curious if I could get some advanced questions, what our viewers would like to know about us, that isn't exactly what we talk about normally. Something that may be a good tidbit for a workshop that maybe somebody might be interested in me answering for them.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah,
Mhm.
guys, definitely. And honestly, feel free any kind of questions that you may have that you'd love Peter to answer or that you think might be great for us to answer in some kind of panel or a forum or at a workshop. Please feel
Mhm.
free, go ahead and put the question into the comments section of whatever venue you're watching this. And we'll honestly, I mean, I don't see why we couldn't answer the question both in this format as well as for that, for whatever panel or workshop where we may be appearing. So um yeah, definitely go ahead and put those questions in the chat. I know I'm also going to be speaking at Bookfest, and there should be a link coming out soon. I believe it's in October, and they're actually they're giving me an honorarium, which is very kind of them, for all the work that I do across the different um, publishing houses and all that kind of stuff. So and like to help aspiring writers and aspiring editors and everything. So when I have more information about that, I'll pass that along. um and in terms of like book signings, I'm putting in the chat right now. I am actually speaking at one, two, three, four. Well, actually, it's going to be six, a total of six different places. But I just provided in the chat five of them. One of them, we're actually in the middle of confirming the date and time. But right now, October 5th, I'm actually kicking it off with Jonathan Mayberry at Artifacts. I provided a link to Artifacts' website. It is an adorable, absolutely adorable bookstore. And November 2nd, I'll be at Dark Delicacies, which is this absolutely iconic bookstore that primarily covers like dark fiction and pulp, not pulp fiction, but uh, more like uh, well, yeah, I guess pulp fiction. Out of Burbank, California. It's one of those bookstores that, like, if you write in certain genres, it's like on your bucket list of places to speak at, you know. So I'm really honored to be there. November 7th, I'll be at Warwick's. That's another really well-known bookstore in the Los Angeles area. November 17th, I'll be at Dark Delicacies again. That'll be part of a book signing for a poetry collection that I have a piece in. I did an analysis of a uh, a very well known poem. So that one actually should be pretty fun. And then on the 22nd, which is the day after my birthday, I'll be at Book Soup again. So you want to definitely check that one out. Book Soup's another one that's it's one of those that, like, Book Soup's more like, I think if you're into like literary or like commercial fiction, it's a bucket list kind of bookstore as well. I'm also going to be in New York in the beginning of, I I think it's the beginning of November. Yeah, November 8th, 8th or 9th until I think it's like the 15th. And because I'm going to be there for to announce the winner of the Drexel Award. So the we launched earlier this year an award with in partnership with Drexel University for Drexel students and alumni to submit their long form creative fiction, any type of fiction, and the winner will get a book contract with us. Um, So yeah, and I believe that announcement comes out November 9th. So that so definitely look for that. That is coming up. Um, wow, I'm tired just listening to myself. But yeah, we've got a lot going on. So you basically somehow volunteered yourself to speak as an alum.
Well, it's not. It's just I just know the professor from my school, and I think she doesn't teach there anymore. But
Mm.
she's 30 miles up the road from me, so we always kind of kept in touch, kind of in a tertial manner. But yeah, it's just reached out to her because we got along and everything, and just kind of worked. So like, sure, I can do this for you. I mean, get 30 minutes to brag about our press. I'm all
Yeah,
for it.
why not? That sounds like fun.
Hmm. I did want to ask you if you didn't mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, more talking on your part, which always works out for me. So
that's so wrong.
I don't have to talk. Could you go over the beginnings of Running Wild again? How it started, where the idea came from, and how it kind of began from acorn to sapling kind of thing?
Oh, sure. So Running Wild started because, well, I've been in the, I guess you could say I've been in the creative writing like industry for uh, probably far too long. Um, and like I'd already, like I think I wrote my first novel um, in the uh, early, before the 2000s, I guess you could say, or early 2000s. And I was already going to all these different conferences and workshops, and I had been honored to go to places like, Bread Loaf. So if you're not familiar with Bread Loaf Writers
Mhm.
Conference, in the literary world,
It's up there.
it's up there. But I'd been to Bread Loaf in Chautauqua and Yale Writers Workshop, and Ohio State's is also another one that's considered pretty iconic. It's up there. Um, and several other ones where there's a small number of individuals who are actually accepted, and you get to work with authors and editors from, again, iconic you know uh, places. And
Mhm.
I was literally it was the very first time I was hanging out with my now husband, and we were at this cafe. And my husband is a musician and a producer, and we were talking about the respective industries. And I knew, and I mean, I still do, tons of just really incredibly talented authors and editors. And I was basically complaining to my then dear friend, um, how I knew all these amazing authors and they just couldn't get a book deal. And I didn't get it because I'd read their works. Like I was like, I mean, these are some killer stories. Like this stuff could be huge. I don't understand why they can't get a deal. And my then dear friend said, "Well, why don't you just start your own press?" And at that point, like I had already been on the board at a variety of writers organizations. And I was like, it just honestly, it had never occurred to me that I could start my own publishing house. So I literally said to him, like, does it work that way? Like, do you just start a press? And he says, "I don't know. I mean, that's how it works in publishing, in music, so why can't it work that way in publishing?" So, I took that, and I then, because I had access from being on the board of all these different, like, writers organizations, and from being, I guess you could say, like, a regular, right? I mean, like, I was never an instructor at Breadloaf, and I was never on the board or anything like that, but because 'cause I'd been there so many times, they knew me. So, like, I could go up to an editor, I could go up to, like, an agent and just say, "Hey, can I," like, during a happy hour or a gathering or whatever, like, "Hey, can I buy you a drink? I'd love to talk to you about, like, how do you decide what you're gonna acquire?" right? And like, do you have any recommendations for someone who's, looking to get their book out there? And I learned, like, I knew a lot from going to those, various conferences and stuff previously. Um, but like, because I wasn't pitching, right? I think because I was, this was more of like on a one-on-one basis, they were much more open about like how decisions were made, and, you know, um, who really made the decisions, I guess you could say, right? And how finalists were found and all that kind of thing. And it just really taught me a lot about the perception of how acquiring titles was versus the reality of how books were acquired. And I made sure to not just talk to guys from like, the Penguins and the Simon and Schusters and everything, but also from like the St. Martin's, which at the time St. Martin's was an independent house, um, and and the smaller presses. And I got to learn a lot about like the different, I guess you could say, operating models that existed among all these different formats. So I went, okay, well, I had published this one book, and I thought, well, I don't want to just go and start a press, right? Like, I want to, because my background is a lot of business transformation, um, and so I wanted to sit down and figure out what was the most efficient and effective way to get a book to market, right? So basically, I experimented on myself first. um, and the first book that we published, again, it was a book that I had written over the course of several years. And then we took the learnings from publishing that book and said, okay, so now let's figure out, uh, you know, how do we want to expand this? And the other thing that I had noticed a lot was that there were a lot of really great short stories and a lot of great novellas that also weren't necessarily getting published. So, our mission and vision from day one for Running Wild was to change the world through story, and that we would publish great stories that just don't fit neatly in a box. So, it was really more about identifying um, really great storytellers, and no matter the genre. Um, and so, uh, TJ's like, remember, mad scientists always experiment on themselves. I resemble that. So I'm totally fine owning that. I always experiment on myself first. Well, no, first I go to those who I know were successful, and I learn from them in terms of like what works and what doesn't. And then I experiment on myself and put things in place. And then uh I'll be honest, like even with all of that homework, I mean, I was doing having those conversations for, let me think about it. So 2011, we didn't start. So for 5 years, I was doing these interviews, and even then, I mean, Peter, you know this. We're still learning, right? Like, because things are just like constantly changing within the industry, in a wide variety of ways. Everything from how marketing and publicity and distribution and manufacturing. I mean, you name it. It's always constantly evolving. So um, we just honestly basically take every time we put something out there, we use it as an opportunity to either, learn, like how can we make things better, or to just say, okay, maybe this didn't work, or this worked great. Now how can we, how can we use it elsewhere? Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yep.
Right now, and what's hilarious is, so we actually started off with Ingram Spark, and Ingram Spark is a print on demand. It's purely print on demand, and we're actually selling pretty well from an ebook perspective. Um, but what we discovered was that uh, oftentimes retailers, they don't want to purchase from PODs. They want to actually purchase from like a manufacturer or a distributor that they're more familiar with. So we actually got picked up by IPG, and IPG is considered one of the top three distributors in North America. And we also we do small print runs, and what that means is we basically pitch our stories, as does IPG Salesforce, right? So there's a whole machine, I guess you could say, behind this, but minimally 6 months to a year before the book comes out, we are out there pitching our one pagers that really summarize all about the book, the author, where they are, where how to get the word out there, you name it. And we encourage people to pre-order. And the reason we really encourage for pre-orders is because the more pre-orders there are, then the bigger argument we have to have a larger initial print run, right? So like if we've got like 100 pre-orders or like 500 pre-orders, then we can argue with our manufacturer and distributor that, hey, if we've got 500 pre-orders, then we should at minimally have like 750 or maybe minimally 1,000 in the initial print run. And which is great, because then what that means is while the sales team is out there pitching for the books to be picked up, or the author is out there pitching to have initial um, events, right, to have book signings or to talk
Mm-hmm.
at different places, that kind of thing. What that means is it gives them uh, a greater argument with that location to pick up more books, right? So what's kind of interesting is it's almost like um uh a weird like cause and effect thing where the manufacturer and the distributor are looking for a bunch of pre-orders. Well, guess what? These retailers are looking to see how many books are already printed beforehand, because if you've got a larger initial print run, then that means that there's an assumption that there's going to be a lot more sales. So they're assuming there's something about this book, right, or this story that the broader general public is going to be interested in. And what's interesting is like that a lot of that is based on the early days or earlier days of publishing, where you couldn't do a print run of like 400 books in an hour, right? Like it would take a week to print 400 books. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it, with today's technology, and I know this because when I went to the sales conference with our distributor and manufacturer, uh, they were very open about the fact that each one of their paperback presses can print 400 books in 1 hour. Each one, not all of them together, right? So the by encourage this enables them to do things like, maybe have an initial print run of like, maybe a couple of hundred at first, because
Mm-hmm.
then they can see if there's an interest and a bigger pickup, and a lot more pre-orders. And then the more pre-orders there are, the bigger the argument is for them to print more books. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's kind of like retraining the retailers on, and actually even the publicists, on how the manufacturers are now making decisions on print runs, because the technology is so much more advanced now. It's not. the decisions aren't being made in the same necessarily in the same ways they were, even 10 years ago.
Right.
So,
Very cool. Thanks.
yeah. Now that everyone's bored out of their minds and they're like, okay, I want to, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go and get a glass of wine or something, which is it's
Exactly.
all good. But yeah, I get questions like that a lot from publicists and from some actually usually it's from publicists will reach out to me because they'll say that they've reached out to they have certain small bookstores that they work with on the regular, and they'll reach out to me and say, oh my gosh, it looks like you're a POD, and so you don't have any books available. It's like, well, no, it's that it's their small print runs. So you want to encourage the bookstores to go ahead and place the orders, so that, because the print runs, like I just said, they can print now 400 books in an hour, right? So it's not the same delays as there used to be. TJ says, how much are the old return policies affecting the sales strategies these days? Honestly, it's the same return policies as before. So in the large retailers and the independent booksellers, they all they're not going to acquire it unless the book is returnable. And all of our books are returnable, again, because well, it's the standard sales policies. Typically what happens though is, like, let's say your book is not returnable, and usually if it's a small press, a small, mid-sized, or large press, uh, the books are returnable, right? Usually it's only not returnable if it's let's say it's on consignment, and on consignment really means the author's bringing the books with them, and they're basically, the bookstore is giving them an opportunity to sell the book at their location. So those aren't usually returnable. Um, Again, just because it's not really the retailer, the bookstore is not necessarily selling it. It's really the author. That said, oftentimes what'll happen is the retailer will acquire the books from the author, and then they'll have them on hand. And again, that's usually something like, if it's for authors who are local, so they're already known within the local community. But yeah, all the old return policies, they definitely they definitely affect the sales strategies, honestly, the same way they always have, right? If it's not returnable, they don't want to acquire it. Um, and unless it's something where the author can bring the books themselves, oftentimes they'll say, hey, sorry, we just can't have you here, or we can't have your books here. So yeah, believe it or not. And it's interesting too, because there are quite a few authors who are pretty successful, like purely online, right? And most of their books are pretty much sold from Amazon. Well, from Amazon. Um, and so much of it is really like figuring out who your market is, and where are the best ways to, or where are the best locations and best places to sell your book, and how to pitch it so that that audience would be interested in picking up the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we've actually got a book. Let me see if I can find this for you. We have a book, which is a memoir by Scott Leva, who was one of the first Spider-Man? I don't know.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. And he basically uh, crafted his memoir around like him becoming Spider-Man. And we are actually going to have a limited edition, which is why I want to find you the cover. Um, we are giving away a limited, oh goodness, I have a lot of emails. Um, we are giving away a limited edition copy with a um, completely unique cover specific for the venue. And let me see. Sorry, my internet's a little slow, probably because we're chatting. um, but we know because it's a memoir that's crafted around his experience in basically becoming, you know, uh, one of the more, I guess you could say, iconic Spider-Man, um, and becoming very prominent in the stunt world. He's actually won an Oscar for his inventions, right around with around um, stunt work. Um, that enables us to identify that, you know, let's see, how do I share this? Let me figure this out. Ooh, okay. Um, and so we actually, oh, that won't work. Bastard. Um, sorry, I'm just trying to find the cover so you can see what I'm talking about. Um, we cut a deal with Carlisle Comic Con, and we created a completely unique. All right, and I will share you. Oh wow, this is weird. Okay, that's it. Okay, so you guys should be able to see this now. So this is the cover that we created purely for Carlisle Comic Con, and obviously it has this unique sticker on it, references Carlisle. It has Carlisle Comic Con's logo on it, special edition, and Scott is going to be at Carlisle Comic Con to sign these limited edition books. Now this is only going to be available at Carlisle Comic Con, and will not, again, it will not be available anywhere else. It will not be available in ebook. It will only be available in paperback. But because we know that, again, it's a Comic Con, then we know that the audience that would be most, or some, at least some of the audience that would be most interested in this limited edition paperback will be at the Comic Con. So we're going to see how this goes in terms of, sales. And we've actually also put it out there for, I want to stay in the studio, but I want to stop sharing. How do I do that? Oh, you don't need to see all that. Come on, let me stop sharing. There it goes. Okay. So because of that, what it does is it enables us to then go to other Comic Cons and Comic Fests and other related festivals, and offer to have a different limited edition type of book with its own unique cover and possibly its own unique content, right? So maybe like a special chapter or special images, all that to be included in the actual in the limited edition paperback. So doing things like this, it gives us more experience and a better understanding of like what goes into it and what we can do to really kind of benefit um, the author, the story, the whole 9 yards. So, really excited to do that. But, through the years, we basically just play with things like that to kind of see what could most benefit our authors and their fantastic stories.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting to me is the longer we've been around, the more like we get submissions. So I'm usually I won't say that I'm always the first person to look at submissions because I don't think that that's true, but I'm usually at least one of the among the first to look at our long form submissions, and we're getting more and more submissions from authors who they're already published in some capacity. Some
Hmm.
are really well known, like they're New York Times bestsellers. Others are, they've already won a bunch of awards, and typically the book that they want to publish with us, it's just not in the same genre necessarily that they're not they may be known for. And then we also get a lot of repeat customers, right? Um, we like Kurt. Right, exactly. Yeah, we get a lot of authors who come back because they just love working with us and they want to, continue. So, um
Question I have is, I'm
mhm,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
do it. All good.
Question I have is, these authors who have already published works and have been bestsellers or have a long, extensive history of writing or publishing, how are these authors open to be edited
Oh,
by our team?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. What's interesting is um at least and this might just be my perception, but um I personally found that the authors who've come to us who to work with us and who've been published in other um, by even much larger publishing houses are very open to being edited, because I mean honestly they're used to it, right?
Mhm.
You know, so uh, it's usually ones guys who've been like they've been kind of struggling to be published and they've hired individuals to edit their work, and
Mhm.
that's usually when I've heard from authors that they're like, well, mine's covered, right? Like it's been edited. um and that's usually when I hear that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
My book
which
doesn't
I'm
need any editing. You sure about that?
right.
Just because your cousin Joey edited for it, ran through it for, maybe you could have another fresh pair of eyes look at it. Something who's not in your close family circle, and
Right. Yeah.
that's just being just playing. I mean, I'm not saying basing that on anything, but I can always find a way. I like to think to make something that's really good a little bit better.
Mm,
Put some more color into it. Put some more um, scenery. Add some character touches that the author just didn't think of. That like, if you bring this to the top, that maybe help with the style of the story. I
mm-hmm.
mean, like I said before, it's always interesting and very fun for me to read the second or the third draft of a novel that I've developed. And I always tell my authors, please don't highlight any of the areas that you've changed. I want to just read it through to see how it affects me the second time through, the third time through. And it's always been a fascinating experience for me on the final read through. Like, wow, I mean, I've asked questions, I've made comments, but I didn't do the writing for this. The author
Right.
did the writing for this, and it's so much better. And I like to think that they're happy with it as well, because sometimes, like the story that I just submitted to you a couple weeks ago or last week,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it went from a rough kind of here's the story, here's how it laid out, very flat, plain. But by the second draft, it had a little more layers to it, some more character information. And the third draft, I mean, just was phenomenal. It was really fantastic in terms of how he drew the characters out of themselves. He added emotion where the emotion wasn't stated. He added, you know, symbolism that were already there that he didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize that he could be played into a bigger aspect of the reality. Like his mother's art studio was upstairs, so that was the one place where he wanted to be recognized by her, and he didn't realize that. Or I asked him if he realized that, like that could be kind of a heaven kind of thing, being upstairs, being above. That's where he wants to be. That's a place he could never go. And the one time he was there for her to paint him, it was the most fascinating part of his life, because he was really seen at that moment. So
Mm.
that was that was very interesting what authors can do with some of the comments that we all make as editors.
Well, and I honestly, I think that's the feedback that I've gotten from authors who've worked with us, right, and our editors. I mean, our all of our editors are picked with intent. I mean, intentionally go after editors who they're not going to be a line editor necessarily, right? What they are going to do is they're going to sit back and ask you leading questions as you as an author, like what you did with that author, right? Like, did you realize like this could be X, Y, and Z? Or, you know, from a structure perspective, did you realize, this? Like, I had one author, she kept changing to an active voice, but the but explicitly stated that this chapter was like written in 19 it occurred in 1950. I'm like, well, so this is contradictory, right? So you've got where this occurs in the past, and but yet you've got like half of this is written in like a first person present. So if me as a reader, A, I'm confused, and B, you're limiting yourself because you're not enabling your character to provide things in reflection. And there's so many more layers that can be provided from both an emotional and a psychological perspective that you're not giving yourself by doing this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
she just hadn't thought of it that way, right? So I challenged her. I said, I want you to go back and look at this and think about like what about those chapters that are clearly in the past, and that you know is there benefit, or what is the benefit to you, um changing it from being in first person present to, even if it could be first person but first person past, right? Still, you're enabling yourself to add those layers, and that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So, um and I realize, like, people watching, you're probably like, my god, everything these two are talking about it's so pedantic, right? Like, who cares? Like, it's so basic. How could people not know that? I mean, when you're the person doing the writing and you're the person who's, putting it on the page, a lot of times you don't realize the things that you're doing until someone points it out to you. And then it's like, like, oh my God, holy moly, I could, this could be so much, I could take this to a whole nother level,
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't even realize I was isolating myself from, you know?
Exactly. And I mean, one thing that I got to mention is that we don't look at writing a novel as something that's easy to do. It's
Mm-mm.
difficult to write a novel. It's difficult to write a good novel. So the hard work that's put in the front end really makes a difference for the authors to get to that point. But one of the things that I run into often is when an author will write out a scene, and I'll read the first chapter of it, like it's 95% dialogue, and I have no idea where I am in the book or where I am in the story's world. And I'm like, I know exactly what's happening because the author knows exactly where they are. So the author sees the action in their head, and putting these two characters together, this group of characters together, they see the environment, they see what everything looks like and how the characters are interacting with it. It's like, yeah, okay, we don't see that stuff. We need to see the place. We need to see the environment. We need to have the senses involved. So that's usually a first big step that I take with a lot of authors. Is like, show us where we are. Give us a place to stand. Give us a place to be. Give us stuff to look at, and for stuff the characters to affect them, to remark upon, or interact with, to make
Mm-hmm.
it more of a rounded story. Because it's there, because you've already seen it. Give it
Mm-hmm.
to us. Just lighten up that, stretch out that dialogue so that it's not a script. It's actually a story. A book.
And oftentimes, we also, a lot of times, will challenge the author, right? Because we'll give that kind of feedback, like, hey, do more description, you know, really enable us to be in the story. And then take also, like, one feedback I give a lot is, well, not, I can't say a lot, but I do give, as well, is don't do a mind dump, right? Don't sit there and just describe, here are the daisies and here's the grass and here's the, no, 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 no. Allow us to view things as the characters are experiencing them. It is
Mm-hmm.
so much more effective. It really makes it a much more immersive experience. And it actually also enables you to provide a level of uh like hints at what's coming next, um, through kind of like threading it throughout the narrative. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, it goes back to the like they're all. It's so funny. I spoke at this one conference recently, and an aspiring author came up to me and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I loved what you were talking about, but I really, I, I'm, I'm afraid I'm just like screwing up based on, all the feedback that like myself and some of the other panelists provided. Like, do I have any advice?" I said, "Yeah, go back, read your favorite books, and analyze it, right? Analyze. So how, if there's some section that you were just like, oh my, completely enthralled, sit down and break it down and figure out what made it enthralling, right?
Mm-hmm.
What really got your attention? What got you immersed into the story? And then replicate it, right? See how you can use similar techniques just as a way of playing, I guess you could say, right? And
Exactly.
then yeah, I mean, and then just keep doing that. And you'll be shocked at the more that you do that, the more you do that analysis, the more you do that play, the more when you actually sit down to seriously write something and like map it out, um it'll become second nature, right? You won't have to think about it. You'll know, like, okay, well, if I want to write a story that's from multiple points of view, and it's, like I want to do it where it's in reflection, or I want to do a first person, then here are the different techniques that I know I can use that would be most effective. And it really just preps you so that you're not going into it blind. You're going into it because you've already done a ton of
Mm-hmm.
work. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I like to say, find the parts of a book or a story where you forget you're reading.
mm,
If you forget you're reading, you're totally involved in the story, and there's just no separation between you and the story. And those parts are the areas to read, to analyze, to see how the author did that.
mm,
What's coming to mind for me is characters remarking upon space or environment or whatever. The book that I'm working on, they're in a bunker 50 feet below the earth, 50, in a concrete sided room. And there's a controller on one side of the table and the main character on the other side of the table. And the
mm,
main character's right hand man isn't there to help the main character along. So the main character's sitting there listening to what the controller has to say, and she's staring at the walls and she's seeing that there's certain concrete panels they're butted close together, but there's some concrete oozing out of it that's frozen in time, of course, because it's concrete. But the concrete is oozing out between the abutments, between the joints,
mm,
and she's thinking to herself, "Is like that's how she feels. That she's being crushed together between these forces, and
mm,
she's frozen in time, trying to get out, trying to get past what's holding her in place." So
mm,
now, not only do we know how she feels or what she's looking at, we also know the environment, and we know what it kind of feels like from a sensory perspective. That's
mm.
kind of what I'm getting at in terms of describing place from the eyes of the character.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's funny because when you realize, like, again, your favorite stories, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you realize you're completely immersed in something that you are literally thinking the way this character would be thinking, is like, whoa. Sometimes it's like, whoa, that's crazy.
And that's part of our job, to take out the stuff that doesn't need to be there because it pulls the reader out of the story.
Right,
Even for a
exactly.
second, if you say, "Oh, the windows by the curtain flashed open," okay, we didn't realize we were in a room. We didn't realize there was a window there. Do windows have curtains? Yeah, they generally do. Do they fly open when the wind hits them? Yeah. But now you're thinking about the environment. You're piecing it together in your mind as opposed to reading what the characters are doing in the next line, the next sentence, kind of thing.
Yep, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. My gosh, we are. I know we're out of time. Holy
We're
crap.
here.
Um, well, with that, I want to thank TJ. I want to thank Cree. I want to thank everyone who joined us. You guys are, as always, phenomenal. So, so, so honored to have you join us. Thank you, Rod. Awesome to see you. And Peter, as always, thank you so much for being a part of this live stream.
Happy to be here.
So guys, don't forget, if you're watching this and it's the recording, please feel free, go ahead, pop your questions into the comments section. We will be sure to address them next week. So with that, we will see you then. Ciao.
See ya.